And it's a complete random order that I put everybody in. I didn't. You want to pull your chair in?
Oh, that's
Just about we got a bit at the table.
Would you like some water?
Oh, that's a few more. That's really nice. A bit squished.
Sit beside me. Daniel.
It's not going to fit in there.
I was going to say, I need to squeeze up a bit. Some water.
Thanks to that.
Have I gone to the...
yes, I'm quite happy with that.
Seven that look the same.
Do mum a bit here. So there's enough room there. I was going to say it's a whole huddle, but it's not. Because there's nothing huddle.
Just check Graham's okay at the back.
I'm fine.
Graham, are you okay to start? Okay. Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Cults Parish Church. Welcome to those who are joining us online. For those of you who are online, if you have a burning question that you would like to ask, the mechanism we're using is that we ask you to email in your question, and the email address is AV, that's Alpha Victor, desk, all one word, at cultsparishchurch.co.uk. And if you could do that, Graham on our AV desk is going to WhatsApp them over to me here so that I can include those in our questions tonight. So I'm assisted this evening by Graham Robertson at the back on the desk and by Philip Bell, who is down at the front. Philip is going to be our man with the roving microphone. Philip is one of the current councillors representing our ward, but he's stepping down and he's here tonight as an elder and member of our church and in no other capacity, just to be clear about that. We're aiming to be finished by 9 o'clock. We're not going on beyond 9 o'clock. If we've dried up the questions before then, that's fine, we'll get away. Malik has already explained that he will need to leave about 8:15 as he is fasting, and he needs to go and have something to eat and break his fast. So we'll bear that in mind. He's not running away when you see him take his leave. He's going to do something very, very legitimate, and we appreciate forewarning and respect your choice there.
Thank you very much.
What I'm going to do is start with Mary at the end of the table there and ask each of the candidates to just introduce themselves, and I've asked them for a fun fact. So we're waiting to see what the fun facts are going to be. So Mary, would you like to introduce yourself?
Okay, I'm Mary Bolton. I'm one of the current local councillors, and I've been a councillor on Lower Deeside for 15 years. And it was sprung on me that I'd find a fun fact. I think it's probably just that I've got more grey hair now than I ever had, and you know, I wouldn't blame it on the job, absolutely not.
You can't hear. Mary, do you want to, no, Malik, it's okay. See if you switch that one on and then just speak into the end of it. Mary, if you want to pass it down, I'll pass it on. It's just that big.
Yeah, we should play with it straight away.
Right, do that. And then just see the other end. Yeah.
Yep.
There we go.
Right,
We weren't sure if it was going to reach.
Right. Can you hear? Oh, gosh, I don't know if it's...
Just you can hold it.
Just hold it.
Okay. Okay, I'm Mary Bolton. I'm one of the current councillors. I've been a councillor for Lower Deeside for 15 years. I know I don't look old enough, but I have been. The grey hair is a testimony to it. I'm an independent councillor, and I put, hopefully, people before the politics, and continue to do so. So we've only got 30 seconds, so I think that's probably it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. And I'm Muhammad Tawkir Malik, and I'm councillor for the last 10 years for Lower Deeside. I moved in Cooter in 1998 from Bridge of Dawn, and it was a rumor that Cooter community does not adopt anybody, but I think the way they adopted me, I'm their part of the family, and I owe a lot to Cooter and all of the Lower Deeside the way they adopted. So first time I won in 2012, and the first ever Labour candidate won from Lower Deeside.
Hello everyone, Duncan Massey. I'm one of the Scottish Conservative candidates. First of all, thanks very much for the for the hustings here tonight. I think it's a really professional setup. First time I've seen myself on screen, so that's a little bit scary. I'm a father of 3 kids and 1 dog, and just really looking forward to this election, which is the first time I've been involved in politics, so it's all quite exciting at the moment.
Hello everyone, I'm Ewan Ritchie. So I'm the SNP candidate. To give a brief bit of background on me, I come from a farming background, and for a number of years I ran a small business in the Scottish borders before moving to Aberdeen to work for Audrey Nicholl. So I work for Audrey on behalf of all of you already at the Scottish Parliament level. And I'm running to be a councillor because I think that Aberdeen needs a change. We've had 10 years of this administration. I think it's about time that we had a new administration come in and try and fix some of the big problems that we have in Aberdeen at the moment. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Gillian Teberin. I'm one of the Scottish Conservative candidates standing in Lower Deeside, and it's a privilege to do so. I live in Aberdeen for the past 40-something years. I'm originally from Dundee, so that might cause some boos, but I don't know, maybe there's some people from Dundee here as well. I'm a mother of 2, and I've got 2 dogs. And I love spending my time in the coffee shops and restaurants around Lower Deeside, and you'll probably see me around here quite a bit doing that.
Hello, I'm the candidate for the Scottish Green Party. I live in Lower Deeside for more than 12 years now. Started working in Aberdeen in 2008, and I'm also from Dundee, but only for 2 years before that, because you can hear from my accent it's not Scottish, but I lived there. I think it's really important that change is going to happen, that things are changing in Aberdeen. Maybe not in a way that the SNP is looking at it, but at least the Green need a voice in that. And I'm happy to be here tonight. And to add another fact, maybe you heard a lot already last night from Cults, because BBC Debate Night was here. And that didn't look funny what you heard there, but it's important, so thank you.
Now, you may have noticed that we don't have Sue with us this evening, who is the Liberal Democrat candidate, but Ian, Sue's actually at a wedding in London, which is why she's not with us, but Ian has very graciously offered to step in and represent them, so I'll let Ian introduce himself.
Sorry, Daniel's just demolished the mic.
Yeah,
Let's have to do it.
I will.
Yeah, if you just move it like that.
Okay. Thanks. As Shuna said, I'm not Sue Mulcairn, and Sue asked me to apologise to you for not being here. It's a family wedding. It's been arranged, obviously, for longer than this hustings, and it's her first chance to see her family, as lots of folk are in the same case, for over 2 years. But she does send her apologies and is sorry that she can't be with you this evening. Some brief facts about Sue. She's lived in Cults for, I think, over 35 years now. Her family went to Cults Primary and Cults Academy. She worked for BP for 37 years in a variety of technical and commercial roles. She's now retired. She's involved in a number of local groups and obviously is the Liberal Democrat candidate. One fun fact I can give you, it's nothing to do with Sue, is that I first met Mary Bolton when she was 18. And at that time, neither of us had any grey hairs.
No. Thank you very much, all of you, for that brief introduction. We're going to start with some questions that have already been submitted, and what I propose to do is ask a couple of those and then open the floor up to your own questions. So if in the first couple of questions something twigs with you and you want to pursue that a little bit, fair dues. If not, if you've got something completely different to ask, then that'll be your opportunity to do so. So the first question that we have is, what place does party politics have in local government? And I'm going to start with you.
Can I get the microphone, please? Thank you. So I think it plays a role in terms of making sure that we are all singing from the same hymn sheet when we come up with a manifesto, and so that we can give you a concrete offering and then try and deliver that if we do get a majority. I also think it's important for working with the central government. So one problem that we've had in Aberdeen over the last however many years has been difficulty between the central government and the council here, which have always been at loggerheads. And so I think that's another good reason why voting SNP this time would be good, because we can have a council that works well with the Scottish Government and actually delivers for Aberdeen. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay, we'll pass it along.
Yeah, I think it plays a role as well. Obviously, in establishing that manifesto, I would actually really like to see an elected mayor for Aberdeen, so that we don't have this 41-man committee that runs the city. I'd like to see someone have a manifesto, stand for it, and deliver on their record. Obviously, I think it's important that there is a sort of governing committee for Aberdeen, because we need that vision here in the city, and I think the Scottish Conservatives are the only party that can deliver that, and we certainly don't want a one-party SNP state.
Okay, thanks very much. I think when Labour introduced this proportional representation, I think this was the best option for the Scotland, that all of the party, they can be a stakeholder in local authorities. And I believe that we, as a local authority, we have to make our own manifesto which suit our city and for the best interest of the city. And we don't have all the time listen to our party that what direction we are getting, what dictation we are getting from our party. And as Mr. Ritchie mentioned that central government, no, I would like to correct him that for last 10 years we've been in administration, we have a wonderful relationship with the central government. However, we had some issues with Scottish government. The biggest issue with the Scottish government we had because we are the lowest funded council in Scotland. And this issue is still here. However, we are trying our best to deliver for the citizen of our city, Aberdeen, and that's why our priority is to deliver for Aberdeen City Council.
Thank you. Well, obviously, as an independent councillor rather than party politically affiliated, I've probably got to be more political than anyone because I've got to work across the council. But, I suppose for me, when you look at party politics, where there's a whip in a party, you'd be as well just having one of them because they're all going to have the same opinion at the end of the day. And if you've got strong individuals within that party, often the other voices aren't heard within that party. So, I appreciate that we will always have to have some kind of coming together, and I think I've worked really hard to make sure that I do work with the parties, but I will always retain my independence. And I think the most recent example of that was over the bus episode where I did depart from administration because for me it was alienating too many people in the city. So, I think there is a place because party politics, and whether it's got, actual parties or whether it's just groups of people who congregate together, we do have to come to a conclusion and deliver. But I think at a local level, I think if we had a city manifesto backed by a number of people that were competent to deliver for the city would be far better than worrying about party politics. So I'm a slightly different point of view.
Ian, do you want to?
Thank you. I probably not unsurprisingly, I believe there is a role for party politics in local government. If you vote for a Liberal Democrat candidate, you know that person's philosophy, how they will approach issues, and they're part of a team. There is a role, as I said, there's a role for party politics. What I don't believe there is a place for is refighting national political battles. Aberdeen City Council should be about Aberdeen and its citizens and delivering services for Aberdonians, schools, roads, social care, our parks and open spaces, not refighting national or constitutional battles. A couple of corrections, if I may. Councillor Malik mentioned Labour introducing PR. No, the Labour Party did not introduce PR for councils in Scotland. That was part of the coalition agreement between the Liberal Democrats and Labour when the first Scottish executive was formed, and that was a Liberal Democrat policy that was adopted by that coalition, and I know that's the case because I was one of the negotiators. In terms of Mary's point about whip, I can assure her Liberal Democrats in Aberdeen City Council have never had a whip and will never have a whip. Our councillors, their first loyalty is to their conscience, their second is to their constituents. And I accept that the views of a Liberal Democrat councillor from the Bridge of Dawn may differ from a Liberal Democrat councillor from Lower Deeside because the priorities and interests of those communities are different. And I think that's a good thing. It's about the city, it's about its people, and it's about providing services. It's not about refighting national political battles. Thank you.
Yeah, of course there's a role for party politics, but lately we had a few examples that it didn't work out in a positive way. I mean, once you're elected as a councillor or as a party, you try to make the best of it for the city and not think, oh, let's at least block this way of thinking. Or, for example, the progress we had during lockdown on discussing Union Street, making it pedestrianised in a big section, or not even a big section. Union Street is almost a mile. It's a 2.2 mile section. That was an emergency measure. It wasn't a great looking, but it helped towards a more sustainable Aberdeen city centre. And then the Aberdeen SNP group didn't really help in maintaining it. And yeah, they found support with the Liberal Democrats. And I basically agree what Ian just said about his view on party politics, but that wasn't a good thing of party politics. And what Mary says, we need maybe, candidate Ritchie, that we need a city manifesto. Of course, we have things discussed in city manifesto since, like the city transport plan or the active travel ideas, but it didn't work out this term. I mean, also the city master plan. That's all basically agreements made in the administration together with opposition. But where did it go? So yeah, there is a place for party politics, but it's been both negative and mostly negative lately. But it can be positively done, so that every party has its voice, because we have to do it together, we cooperate. It's not just that one party takes over. This Aberdeen is a diverse community, a big city of different ways of thinking, and yeah, we have to come together in the end.
I have to also agree, and I'm going to agree with the SNP candidate for the very first time, because SNP and Conservatives don't always agree on things. But yes, we are shaped by our policy at a national level. I joined the Conservatives because I believe that they care most about the people of their communities, and it does feed into the local community. So I'm shaped by the policies of the Scottish Conservatives, and I'm proud to say that. But my first priority above everything else is to represent the people of Lower Deeside and to listen to what is important to you, not what's important to other people, to listen to what you've got to say. And that's why I'm standing as a candidate. I think we hear too much about fighting between parties. We've seen that it can work really well in coalition. We've worked in coalition with Labour, we've worked with independents before, and that can work really well. So I'm here to represent you and to put your policies, your priorities first.
Okay, right. Thank you very much, all of you, for your responses there. The next question we have to put to you is, what do you see as the biggest issue facing the Lower Deeside ward? And we'll start with Ian at the top of it, and we'll go the opposite direction this time.
Thanks, Shuna. Well, you might think a councillor from, I'm going to say the city as opposed to Lower Deeside, might not have an answer to that, but I do. I think and the Liberal Democrat view is that the biggest challenge facing Keltsmill, Timber, Bealdside and Cooter, as it has been for many years, is the huge, massive pressure on the local infrastructure. This is a fantastic place to live, which means it's very popular with people, but that means that schools, roads are constantly under pressure. It's great that in the last 10, 15 years we've had a new Celts Academy built. Timber School is on the way. It's fantastic. It's going to be great when it's open for business. But there's going to be continuing pressure on Lower Deeside's infrastructure. And if Sue is elected as councillor for Lower Deeside, she will work with other councillors from Lower Deeside and others to secure the best possible deal for Lower Deeside's communities, so that you have the local facilities that you need, and that these still growing communities deserve.
Okay, thank you. Daniel?
It's great living in Lower Deeside. I live in Lower Deeside for 12 years now in Pieterkuta, and from the beginning on I've been, for example, just an example, I would look outside, hear the road. This is a main road through the area. It's covering 8 miles of Lower Deeside, of our ward, or maybe even, yeah. And it's not in a great state. It's just one of the challenges we have to cope for a sustainable future. To deal with that, the space for cyclists is just gutted. I mean, it's just potholes and the rest of it, and it has been addressed for years to improve that. That's just an example that our biggest challenge is to make this area this an example to make it more sustainable, like future thinking. I mean, we don't face the huge challenges that some wards in Aberdeen in the city face. We are lucky here, but still we have to, yeah. We also, what we saw, the climate effects of flooding, we've seen that a few times during a couple of years. So we have to take an eye on that. And also developments like extensions in greenbelt areas, that's a big challenge to deal with that. Can we cope with that amount of houses in a green space? Can we just not fit in the houses we need in certain gaps in the built-up areas? Yeah, that's it's still lots of things to do and to address. Thank you.
Thank you. Gillian?
What I've been doing the past few months since we knew that we were going to be standing for election was going around the doors of Pieterkuta with Duncan, Deeside, Miltonberg cults. And I've actually been listening to people on the doors, because to me that shapes what local councillors do. It's what's important to you, not what's important to the party. And what I'm hearing on the doors is that the roads and pavements, yes, are a big issue. It's causing problems, and the Scottish Conservatives are going to be putting £3 million into Lower Deeside in this next election to fix these things properly, and it's something I'm hearing all the time is really important. As a parent of 2 children with additional needs, I know that education is really important, and this is something I'm hearing on the doorsteps as well, that we're not having enough teachers, and I'm sorry, but you can thank the SNP for that. We're not getting enough teachers through the doors. They're not staying in the profession because they're so stressed. So education is important. We need to be providing more for children with ASN needs particularly. We're going to build more schools, yes, but we need more teachers to actually be in the schools. And I agree that planning is also really important. We can't just keep building houses on green spaces. We need to think things through properly. We need to have proper infrastructure, and we need to listen to the communities and work with the community councils and hear what you're saying and base our policies around that.
Girls Academy got more teachers recently. I'm in the parent council there, and it's just obvious that thanks to the Greens we got even more teachers. So, in the cooperation agreement.
Okay, we're going to move along the table, and Ewan, I'll come to you.
I think I just need to come back on that quickly. We do have the highest per pupil ratios in the whole of the UK, and we just hired a bunch of people support assistants, so I think that's totally inaccurate, but go ahead. So in terms of Lower Deeside, there's a number of issues, and obviously, you know, when you go around the doors, what you find is you speak to 100 different people, you get 100 different answers. You know, everyone has different priorities, and I think the issues that have already been mentioned around planning, around the state of the roads, around schools, are all really important. I think things that, you know, are also probably important and have not been mentioned yet, at least I don't think they were, sports facilities. I know that in Kuta, a lot of people are a bit unhappy with the sports hall there and would like to see upgrades there. I think climate change is an issue for everyone, and so we need to look at how we can retrofit people's houses to get them ready for net zero. So that's insulation, solar panels, batteries, things like that. I think that we need to help people to stay in their homes, you know, longer rather than having to go into care homes. So that's one thing that we have in the manifesto, is about helping people to adapt their homes so that they can stay in them longer. And I think the active travel routes that have been talked about into the city centre need to be repaired and upgraded. And I think the problem is also when you get into the city centre that it's very difficult to then go around the city centre, because the actual network within the city centre is not very good. So there's a decent route in on the old railway line, but we need to actually be able to get people around the city. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, I think the biggest issue facing the area is just ensuring that the local services match the growth in housing that we've seen, a bit like what Ian touched upon. Huge growth in the area. We've got to ensure that those resources, schools, GPs, all the rest of it match the population. And I think in that regard it's sort of disappointing that time and time again we see the local planning decisions overturned by central government, and I think that's really an issue that we need to touch upon. The other big issue which I want to mention, and I think is citywide but really affects Lower Deeside, is the economy. You know, we've got to be supporting the oil and gas industry. We are going to be transitioning to more renewables, and there are opportunities there, but the oil and gas industry remains the major employer in the city, and they're a major employer for this area. So I really think we need to continue supporting them and not turn our back on them, as we've seen again from the central government.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I think the biggest issue for Lower Deeside is that pressure on our schools, because our schools are, of course, Cults Academy is one of the best schools in Scotland, and that's why most of people like to move in this area. And then we have capacity issues in our Cults Primary and Cults Academy, and we are trying our best to solve. We are building new school. Multimer Primary School, I think it was doing a right job, but still I believe it was not fit for purpose, and that's why we moved. And in 2017, I was campaigning for the new school, and the school is looking in at the moment is almost completed, and it's out of state. It is a wonderful facility, and hopefully we will open the door for our children very soon.
One of the main things, I've been very involved with supporting vulnerable individuals through COVID in the Lower Deeside. And what's become really, really apparent to me is the isolation facing an awful lot of our older generation. And I'd like to see services to be able to support and encourage older people that, yes, they'll remain in their home, but they'll have an active social life, that there'll be services available. We're seen as the leafy suburbs, and I think sometimes we're forgotten. You know, so I would really like to see more support for our older residents in terms of we find it really hard to get carers out here because it's seen as remote from the city centre, and often for some of our carers who come from the centre of town or the sort of the regeneration areas, they don't want to come all the way out here. So it's about making sure that we have sufficient carers that can come out here and allow people to remain at home and be supported. I think, you know, we do have pockets of pressure, particularly at Cults Primary in terms of education. We do have a falling role at Cooter Primary School, and I think that, again, we're looking to be able to support that. We do have a need. We've got a lot of people who are families that are trapped in private housing but in small one-bedroom flats, so they're looking for affordable housing, and it's not necessarily they don't want to rent somewhere, so we need to look at some sort of low-cost housing that they can actually afford to buy and to live in, because, you know, they've made that step onto the housing market, but they're often trapped within that. So there's lots of different issues that face our residents, and pavements and roads are classics. I mean, our pavement, because we've got a lot of mature areas in particularly like Multimber and Cults, where in Cooter have actually had quite a lot of pavements resurfaced recently over the last couple of years. But certainly when I've been out leafleting over the last few days, and I mean, I was aware of it before, I've seen the degeneration of the roads and the pavements in particular, and for older people, when they're walking on those, they're a trip hazard. So I think we really need to focus on resurfacing the pavements, particularly if we're promoting active travel. The other thing that is often raised is around the winter maintenance. And again, that's making sure we have gritted pavements for everyone so that they can access down to the bus stops. So, you know, there's a number of, you know, everyday issues that face people. So it's not necessarily about the big, shiny things that people are really that interested.
Okay, thank you very much, Mary. If you hang on to it just now. I'm just conscious that I'm going to ask the next question, and by the time we get round everybody, Malik might need to be...
No, it's fine.
Are you sure?
I will try my best to be here as late as possible.
Well, we're moving from thinking about Lower Deeside into the city centre.
I can stay here till 25 minutes. Okay. I can break with water then.
That's all right.
Okay, I can break the button.
Okay. So the next question is actually about Union Street. Surprise, surprise, there's going to be a question on Union Street. And the question is, the questioner would like your thoughts on Union Street and what your plans would be to rejuvenate it back to its former glory days.
Okay, well, it's probably quite pertinent that I get the first question, because I led on the city centre master plan, which came about after the sort of the divisive nature of the Union Terrace Gardens decision. So, you know, we put together a 25 to 30 year master plan. We were out to everybody, all the stakeholders, and stakeholders, I mean every resident, were invited to contribute with a blank piece of paper and said, well, what do you think Aberdeen needs? And we formed around 50 projects from that, and we have actually, from a council perspective, delivered on the vast majority of those. But, and there's always a but, you know, we don't own a lot of the property that's on Union Street. However, I'm really pleased that we've got to a stage now that we've had the CARS project, which is a regeneration fund that helps people who want to upgrade their frontages on Union Street. So we've been probably given several £1 million working with Historic Environment Scotland to be able to do that, because if you look at all the information that comes back from people, it's about, can we get the bushes out of the buildings? Can we fix the drain pipes? Can we, you know, it's all of these, again, basic things. So we've got a programme of activity to do that, and we're also providing, through the CARS scheme, up to 70% sponsorship for that. I want the buses back on Union Street because I will not alienate people with either mobility issues due to disability or age. So for me, I took a decision to vote for the buses to go back onto Union Street. We haven't got the infrastructure or the road network to be able to have those parallel streets where we can be quite selective. I'm absolutely you know, behind having areas where you do have pedestrianised sections, where you can have that bit of street cafe culture. Now I know anybody will be sitting going, it's so cold in Aberdeen, but you'd be amazed at the amount of people that actually want to sit out. If I had my way, again, what I would do is create zones where we gave business rate breaks so that we could actually get retail back into Union Street so that people could have something to come for, because at the moment they're not just going to come in for a cup of coffee. You know, there's lots of places that you can actually get to far easier, I hate to say, than Union Street for a cup of coffee. So we have to have a reason and make it a destination. So for me, it's about upgrading the buildings, getting them back to that lovely historic fabric that people love. Union Terrace Gardens, we have to get that finished, and it will deliver, I think, that green space, that oasis in the heart. Culture is really, really important. I work really hard with the cultural sector to make sure that we've got a really vibrant cultural offering, from the Lemon Tree, the Music Hall, HMT, the Tivoli, the Arts Centre. There's a lot going on. And of course our art gallery, which we just reopened, having gone through a huge transformation. So there's an awful lot in Aberdeen, but what we need to do is change perceptions, but absolutely make it accessible. And when we did the master plan, what, about, it must be 6 years ago, or maybe a bit more than that actually, when we had a unanimous decision in the chamber to support it. We all said that, you know, there was tweaks on the projects, but, you know, principally everybody signed up to that document. We recognised there was going to be a lot of work. There was a lot of work for the private sector to do. It's not just about the City Council, and it's not just the City Council's master plan, it's the city's master plan. And for that reason, we have to get behind it. We've actually got to make sure the main problem that was identified there was about accessibility and connectivity, and we're still grappling with that today. But one thing that came out of that was we couldn't take the buses off. And I'm afraid that's what we've done. But hopefully now that we've had that vote, that will be reversed. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Bolton. I think Councillor Bolton mentioned all of these city centre master plan, and thanks to the one of our Labour finance convener, he actually brought these city centre master plan regeneration for refurbishment of our art gallery, our music hall, our skin house, and Union Terrace Garden. Now, we have seen Union Street for many, many years, for at least 40 years, nothing has been done. Anytime any administration is there, they sometimes scared to take a step, but this was the positive step to change the Union Street. We just cannot just carry on the status quo. Who is king? Cars, buses, or people? Of course, peoples are the king. And this was opportunity that in over 150 million master plan, if we can do something for the Union Street to bring people in. Mostly people, when they change their habit of shopping in your city center, and then they drift away. So when they leave Aberdeen cities and they will go down south in Edinburgh or Glasgow for their shopping, they will not come back. Best opportunity for them was to regenerate this Union Street. Also for an open market was another great opportunity as well. And I believe that every city in Scotland, Glasgow, Edinburgh, Dundee, Inverness, they have part of their city centre pedestrianisation, but why not in Aberdeen? Out of 63 cities, we are only one city who have nothing. So if we had 2 years, more than 2 years, this part closed for buses and we managed, why not forever? This was the best opportunity, and I think whenever we take some step, you get some opposition. For example, Marshall Square, when we started this project and so many people opposed and everybody is praising, no, we are getting fruit. So we have to take a positive step for our city centre.
Thank you, Duncan.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people are singing really from the same hymn sheet. You know, we all know what we want. We want a busy, bustling, vibrant city centre. The question is, how do we get that? And I think we're going in the right direction. Union Terrace coming online is going to be a big thing. Things like the city centre is not just going to be a shopping area anymore. It's got to be lots of things. It's got to be a place where people work, where people live, where people shop, where they have a coffee, where they come for a meal at night. It's got to be all those things. So you know, one of the other key good aspects recently is Shell moving to the city centre. I think that's going to, you know, bring a lot of people in and make it vibrant. So I think it comes back to that accessibility issue. And while I do believe in pedestrianisation to some extent, I believe the buses should be allowed. One of the conditions I have under me for if I become a councillor is that my mum has made it an issue that the buses, she must be able to catch a bus to Marks and Spencer's. So I do support buses going through that area, even if it's only from west to east, just so you can have that cafe culture and you have the connectivity. So, you know, I think it's coming. Obviously, in this next council, we need to agree on that important area between Market Street and Bridge Street and get that right. The park coming online, getting the accessibility right, but also, in my opinion, it's bringing all these different things together. You know, every city is exactly the same. You know, shops are closing and things like that. So it's got to be that destination with lots of different things going on: coffee, restaurants, bars, shopping, and places of employment like large offices like Shell. Thank you.
So are we going for a clean sweep on the buses?
Yeah, so I think I would agree with a lot of what the panel have just said. I think part of the problem with the Union Street pedestrianisation was that it was done without proper consultation. So it happened during the Spaces for People debacle, and then it kind of came in through the back door, and that's upset people a lot. I think the other problem, like what Mary mentioned, is that the road network in Aberdeen just doesn't really allow for us to not have buses going along Union Street, because they just all go on Guild Street now, and Guild Street's important too, because that's the entrance to the city centre if you're coming off a bus or a train. and you'd come out to a traffic jam at the moment. So I think you know, it's going to get reopened anyway, because there's big sewage works taking place on Guild Street. So it's going to get reopened to buses and taxis anyway in a few months, and then we'll get to see what it's like then, and we can review it and come to a decision on it at that point. I think in terms of Union Terrace Gardens, it's possibly not my cup of tea what they've done with it, but it's good that something has been done with it. And you know, it's upsetting that a lot of the trees got cut down and that there's a lot more concrete on it now than there probably was before. So it's less of a park and more of a sort of commercialised space. So one thing the SNP group are very keen to do is to take some of the unused space on Queen Street and use that to make a new urban garden there, so that we can have another green space in the city centre. Because it's one thing that Aberdeen really is very low on, is green space. You know, if you go to places like Edinburgh or Glasgow, there's a lot more green space in the city centre, and we have very little here. So I think if we have a lot of derelict buildings in the city centre, and I think if we can start to use some of them to actually have more green space, that would be really good. So yeah, I think I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, thank you. Moving along, Julia.
I think there's quite a few things to address here. When I was younger, my mum used to drag me from one end of Union Street to the others because there were lots of shops, and I used to hate it because it took ages to go up and down every coffee shop and BHS and all the rest of it. I think we need to acknowledge the fact that the way people shop now has changed. A lot of people more are shopping online, and I think we do need to make that city centre more vibrant, make it more cafe culture, bring some more local artisan small shops in and support our local businesses, because there's spaces there that could be used for local businesses. And I, for one, like to support local business. I like to see them thrive, so I would like to see more independent shops in the city centre and being supported there. I agree that green space is really, really important, and I think we've got some absolutely fantastic parks in the outskirts of the city. We've got lovely parks here, we've got parks in Hazelhead, Duffy Park, and I don't agree with Union Terrace. I don't think it's going to be a concrete jungle. I think there's going to be plenty of green space there, and I think it's going to be a really beautiful space when it's finished. It's just a pity we didn't use previous money that was available to do it, but we're doing it now. One thing that the Scottish Conservatives is very keen on doing is promoting pocket parks as well. So although we've got the large parks such as Duthie Park and Hazelhead, we want to see more pocket parks spring up throughout the city. And that's providing little green oasis areas around the community. I know Philip Bell knows about that as well, and that's nothing to do with party politics. I just know that you've had some involvement with that in the past. One thing I think is also very important is the harbour area of Aberdeen. The Scottish Conservatives are looking for a free port status for Aberdeen, which I think is going to be absolutely vital for the city centre to bring more tourists in eventually, now that we're hopefully starting to move past COVID. And I think that's really important. That's going to be a joint scheme with Peterhead. We're supporting calls for a better fair share from the Scottish Government for Aberdeen, so that we can get 2 years a rates relief scheme, so that we can encourage businesses back into the city centre. And as part of the UK Government scheme, we're investing £170 million into the city centre. So I think it's really, really important that we're realistic about what we do with the city centre. I don't think we can go back to the days of old, but I think we've got such beautiful buildings there that we should be restoring, and we're going to be cleaning them up as a party as well. We're going to be cleaning up the city centre and keeping it sparkling when we do have sunny days, which isn't very often. We're also looking to introduce a pilot scheme for subsidised travel, so the buses are very important. And like Duncan, my mum can't wait to go back to Marks and Spencer's, because at the moment she can't get parked because she can't figure out where to park and it's too far for her to walk. So I would support buses near to Marks and Spencer's, and hopefully getting a few more good shops down there. I do think it's important to balance local with national businesses as well. I know that we all miss John Lewis. I know I certainly do, and it was a sad closure for the city. But there's nothing to say we can't encourage more business back into Aberdeen and show that this is a place that people should invest in and will want to be in, because I think Aberdeen's got a great future, and I don't think we should put ourselves down too much. And one final thing I wanted to raise was the airport. People are going to be travelling again, and there's going to be more and more people coming here. And I think it's important to link the airport with the city centre and also with TECA, which is also another fantastic facility that is being used for concerts. Not that I've been to one yet, I've only been to conference, so, but I would like to see that getting linked, and that's something I will support. And this might please you, I think we should have cycling lane reviews as well. I don't know whether I should admit to this or not, but I bought a bike, And I am intending to use the bike more often, and I do agree that the cycling lanes should be used properly and should be safe for cyclists. But I think we need to review where they are, how many we are, how many there are, and how we fit that in with the current road system.
Yeah, a lot of things have been said by now, and I agree with sharing the positivism that we can create a way better Union Street than we have now. And during lockdown, we were confronted with the fact that we needed more space to walk around. And for that reason, space for people, the 0.2 mile of 1 mile space was pedestrianized. I've never said, and now you hear people say, or the candidates say, we get buses back through Union Street. The buses were there, but it was, for example, for Kuttervolk, it was easier to get to the station, to the Guild Street station, because the bus was now diverted over Guild Street, bus 19. And so, I mean, you can adjust, and I think pedestrianisation is a part of a main street, city main street. If you say it doesn't work out for Aberdeen because the history of the layout, basically the infrastructure is lacking, you have to work on that. And I'm very much for public transport into our cities. The main thing to get there together with active travel. And the main issue of Union Street is the true fare of many, many cars that don't need to go there necessarily. It's just people are used to go to Union Street, but it should be avoided as a main fare, main through road for city users, for going through the city. The council have just failed on that for years, and Union Street doesn't look good. And I agree with all the candidates; it has lots of opportunity for nice, sustainable shopping. And besides the issue that we face, that lots of things are sold online now, but the cafe culture is a great thing. And also make it more greener. It's quite a empty, bare, huge road of 4 traffic lanes. We have to do something about that. And the first thing, of course, is add cycling space there on both sides, segregated cycling infrastructure. Why isn't it there? But if I talk about it, shouldn't be just there. It should also be connected from Kutter. So from the Deeside road, where we just had the multimodal active travel corridor study, maybe you all done that online, the consultation that we had, that you maybe added to that. We need better active travel infrastructure. The road is just too focused on cars, and it's just gutter use for the cyclist. So once you get into the Great Western Road bit and you go to Holborn, it should all be idealized for active travel. And then you reach Union Street. It's just nothing there. There are only cycling boxes at the junction. And people were complaining when it was a bit tight during the active travel, during the spaces for people measures. And that got taken away already months ago. Now it's only what we have left is an emergency area for walkers, for walking people, for basically an example of pedestrianisation that is not ideal, but it was at that point of time a measure that tested us out. And I think we should keep pedestrianisation strongly in focus together with good public buses, because we are the party that delivered free buses travel for under 22s. All the youngsters from Lower Deeside get into the town by bus. They don't have to go there by getting the driving license once they are 17. It's just, it's obvious. We have to change thinking the way we are traveling and how we get what we do in the city centre.
Okay. I have to say most pensioners don't cycle. Don't take Marshall Spencer, they don't have that ability to feel their bikes.
I agree with that, but I've never said that I want active travel for not exclude that I was excluding pensioners. Till a high age you can use to e-bikes, we should think about that. And also the buses, they didn't get to. I mean, Marks and Spencer's is in the pedestrianised area, but it's not far from that where you can drop off the bus. You can deliver on the pedestrianised area. You can put on services that are helpful for the elderly and the disabled, like trishaws, for example, electric-assisted trishaws. It's just a small area. The tricycles that are you have but it's not that you run them yourself. It's a service, it's a public service. You can, as an elderly person, you can just get off the bus, get on that where you want to be. It's like a circle in town via Belmont Street, School Hill, Broad Street, that you can get there and don't need to be brought there by bus. I mean, there are still bus options and they should be idealized, but that's an option. It's not that once you get out the bus, you have to be in front of Marks and Spencer's. It doesn't work like that in spaces like Glasgow or Edinburgh.
Okay, can I just, we're going to take questions from the floor just in a wee minute, but I want to let Ian have an opportunity to answer the question.
This microphone.
It's a clip.
Thank God it. So the question was about restoring Union Street to its former glory days. I think everybody agrees, actually we can't do that. What we need to do is create a new, fresh Union Street to go to future glory days. People's shopping habits have changed, and sadly they're not going to change back, so we need to recognise that. Another one important point is, I think Mary made the point already, that Aberdeen City Council doesn't own most of the buildings. In fact, it owns very few buildings on Union Street. So if you're going to revitalise the buildings, you need to work in partnership with the building owners. In terms of what happens on Union Street, it needs to be things that you can't or don't want to do online. So that's about experiences, it's about culture, it's about hospitality, but we can't have a Union Street that is only pubs, coffee shops and restaurants, because that's not going to work either. Specialist shops, health services. I know you can do remote health now, but health services are things that you need to be there usually in person. And also as a workplace, and somebody's already mentioned the Shell's move into the city centre. But Union Street also needs to be accessible, and in my view, accessible to everyone. And sadly, the current arrangements where Central Union Street is closed do not work for a lot of people. If you're disabled, have limited mobility, are pushing a wheelchair, are pushing a buggy with a kid in it, it is a fair climb from Guild Street up to Union Street. And for that matter, it's a fair, if you're pushing a wheelchair or a buggy, you've got to be holding it back as you go back down the hill. And that, we need to recognise that. It needs to be accessible. I don't want a city centre where people in wheelchairs or parents with children in buggies feel excluded. So yes, buses should be back on Union Street. I first argued for that back in September last year. I'm delighted that eventually, about 6 weeks ago now, I think it was, the council finally agreed to do that. Above ground floor, there's got to be opportunities on Union Street to create more homes. A lot of the space above ground floor level on Union Street isn't actually used. I was interested by Gillian's comment about cleaning up Union Street buildings. Several years ago, the SNP on Aberdeen City Council, I was really hacked off about this because I thought it was a great idea and I hadn't thought of it. But the SNP on Aberdeen City Council proposed a scheme where the council would buy buildings, refurbish them and then sell them on. And I thought that's a good idea. The Conservatives and the Labour Party rubbished it. And I still think it's a good idea. I'm looking at Councillor Alan Nicholl, the SNP group leader, sitting in the cheap seats. It was a great idea. Daniel mentions access to the station. And yes, the diversion via Guild Street for buses provides easier access to the station. But, to be blunt, there's an awful lot more people get on the number 19 along North Deeside Road wanting to go to Central Union Street than want to go to the station. And its access to Central Union Street is important. One other point, if I may, is that please remember that in terms of incentives to get businesses into Central Union Street, the council doesn't set the level of non-domestic rates, and it doesn't set the rateable value, the non-domestic rateable value of buildings. Effectively, that's nationalised. And before my Conservative colleagues have a pop at the Scottish Government, that was done by Mrs Thatcher.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. We're going to now take some questions from the floor. I do have more here, but perhaps it's an opportunity for you that are gathered to ask a question. We've got a question over here. If you just wait for the microphone, if that's okay. Yeah. Just that lady.
Mal, are you remembering?
You need to go.
Fine more. It's time over, but I want to hear one or two questions. Oh my goodness, 26.
Hi there. Yes, there's been a bit of a national discussion recently. However, it does affect local politics and local authorities. So it's basically politicians and leaders have been tying themselves up in knots trying to answer this question. And flip-flopping too. So I want to know your positions, and it's a bit of a truth question. What is a woman, and do you support women's sex-based rights? And by the way, the reason why I'm saying it is local politics is because it affects schools, it affects public facilities, and it also affects social care, especially vulnerable people. Thank you.
Happy to go on this one if you want.
We'll start with Gillian, if that's okay.
I work for one of the MSPs at the moment in Parliament, and this is something that's a hot topic, as you say. It's something that's very, and I look at it as two different ways because I'm a parent and I'm a woman, obviously. For me, the biggest issue is about safety of women. That's the most important thing for me, and children. And I respect the rights of all, but safety for women and children is my first priority. And I'll go out on a limb and tell you exactly where I stand on it. I do believe that you should have facilities for all, but I also think you should have a safe space for women and children to get changed without any sort of fear of anything, or to make them feel like they're unsafe. That's the most important thing to me. And I think even if you have changing facilities that are suitable for all, that's fine, but I think you should also have that safe space for women and children as a separate facility alongside that. And that's my view on that.
Do you want to come back on that, Mary?
Yeah. As the other woman on the panel, again, I would actually agree totally with Gillian. You know, I think there's a place where, you know, you can have a shared space, but again, as a parent, I've got 3 sons, so, you know, I'm not talking it from having daughters, but for their protection as much as for women's protection, I think things like male and female toilets, I personally am more happy with that. And that's not to discriminate against anybody who's transgender or anything else, but you can have a space that they can go in which is neutral if you want. But I do think that we need male and female, and that's not to discriminate anybody, but it's actually, and I think in a society that we have today where, you know, to be tactile in any shape or form is frowned about. If you put your hand on someone, you've got to ask permission. Can I touch your hand to shake it? You know, we've gone to this extreme, but yet then we're creating these spaces that people, I think, can be vulnerable in all sorts of ways. So for me, for the protection of everyone, you know, and as a woman, I wouldn't want to go into a toilet and be faced with men, for instance. So, and I know friends who used to swim down in a wild swimming area down in London, actually, and there used to be a male and female and a mixed. And actually, they have moved out of it. A lot of them have left the female swimming because there was a gentleman who said, no, you know, who said he wanted to be recognised as a woman. And never actually participated in any of it, but just sat and watched them, and those ladies felt very uncomfortable, and the majority of them felt that they had no alternative but to cease going. So I think, you know, there's lots of different arguments around this, but I think that everybody is entitled to feel safe, and we can create zones for everyone, and I don't think anyone should be forced into a mixed situation if they feel uncomfortable with it.
Okay, Denny, the gentleman wants to come back on that question at all.
Can I answer the question then?
Yeah.
I have to. I was keen to hear more questions from audience, but time is running out. So, I absolutely agree with Councillor Bolton and Gillian. It is very, very important for safety of children and women. We have separate facility. There's nothing wrong that there are separate joints and ladies, these changing facility. There are mixed facility as well, but for the safety of women, I think I absolutely agree with Councillor Bolton and Gillian.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else want to make any comment on that? Yeah, Ian?
A woman is someone who identifies as a woman. The data is clear that trans people are no more likely to be predatory or potential sexual offenders than the general population. I would simply, actually I'll challenge you. is the question for me. If your concern is about safety and sexual predators, does that mean that you want to ban lesbians from women's spaces?
Can I challenge you?
I'd like an answer to a question, if I may.
Right, I'm actually going to interject because I think we're diverging ourselves away from the purpose of this evening.
That's fair. Well, the lesbian's the same. I'm the same sex as a lesbian, so I'm very happy to be in the same space as a woman. So that is absolutely not correct. And also, trans women are male and they have the same sexual crime rate as men, as you would expect.
I said
so
that.
I'm afraid you're actually wrong in what you're saying.
No, I said that. I said they were no more likely to be predatory or potential sexual offenders than the general population.
Okay.
But you're still male.
Okay. I think I want to move on from this because we're kind of getting away from local issues and we're here to consider a local election.
It's an important issue.
Yeah, I know, but I don't want to spend a huge amount of time talking about something that isn't directly relating to the local elections. So, Norman, you had your hand in the air.
I'd like to thank Ian for his comments. It's very valid. Trans women are women.
I must be getting stone deaf. I can hardly hear what any of you say on the
Because they
platform.
identify with it.
My name is Norman Bird. I've got no affiliation to any of you parties here at all, Labour, Liberal, Independence or anything. My first thing is, do we need party political people on a local council? What we want is people with ability and common sense. And sadly, a lot of people on your council are seriously lacking in that. The buses that we had, it's taken nearly 3 months to get these buses restored in Aberdeen. 3 months, and Mary's been pushing it like nobody's business.
Okay, have you got a question, Norman?
We've got it back into the bean again. My disappointment in the council comes way back when Ian Wood was trying to get the gardens organised. And despite having a vote in Aberdeen, the people voted in favour of one of the politics to be done, and the council then changed over and they decided that they wouldn't allow that to happen. Now, where was the democracy in that? There was just no democracy. The council lost all credibility from that day onwards. Going on to Union Street was an iconic part of Aberdeen for many years, and it was in decline long before internet buying became part of the scene. It was in decline from, people used to come from all around Scotland just to walk up and down Union Street. Now people even in Aberdeen don't want to go to Union Street. And that's how bad things are. I don't know how you're going to resurrect it. I mean, did you make a mistake by allowing Union Square to go in? Because all the shops went from Union Square, from Union Street into I mean, that's planning for you. No foresight was given. I could have told you that was going to happen, and many other people, but the council didn't seem to understand.
Okay, have you got a question, Norman, or are you just making your point?
I'll ask him to comment on it. That would be the question,
okay,
if you want a question.
Okay, can we get a question? We've got a hand up here.
Many of the issues that have been brought up and set of priorities like planning, the domestic rates for businesses, they're areas that are held at a Scottish Government level. And I noticed you at the start mentioned the fact that the Aberdeen City Council often comes into disagreement with the Scottish Government. And he said tried to criticise that. But actually, is that not because Aberdeen City Council are standing up for people in Aberdeen? So I'm going to ask all the candidates, in a situation where Aberdeen City Council is standing up for people in Aberdeen and going against the Scottish Government, where they're making decisions that don't support the local area, then will they stand up to the people in Aberdeen, or will they stand up to the Scottish Government?
Okay, I'm going to turn to you, Ewan.
So obviously the council should stand up for Aberdeen, but I don't think that's been the case so much. I think it's more been about having a kind of constitutional battle and griping about the Central Belt gets all the funding, which is what you hear all the time, which is pervaded through it. It's not true. The Scottish Government funded the AWPR. They're funding the energy transition zone. What about the new harbour? They've helped to fund that as well. So yeah, so is the UK government. But when it comes to Just Transition Fund, the UK government hasn't matched that money. What about carbon capture and storage? What did the UK government do there? They put in 2 sites in England when the best project was in the northeast. So, you know, we don't need the UK government. They've given you 20 million for a new market. That's like pennies when they've taken 330 billion. 330 billion. 330 billion of oil and gas revenues over the years, and Aberdeen is 1.6 billion in debt. They've taken it from 450 million when they came in 2012 to 1.6 billion today. Like, this is the state of Aberdeen. So don't talk about the UK government's the good ones here. The Scottish government's been doing a lot for Aberdeen. You know, we could always do more, but it's true. It's true. I just listed you listed you various ones. What about all the new health facilities going in the Royal Infirmary? We've got new hospitals going in Aberdeen. We've got the highest number of GPs in the UK per capita. Like, what more do you want?
Okay.
Private health by Scotland has the lowest percentage of private healthcare in the whole of the UK as well. So,
okay, I'm wanting to offer Mary an opportunity to come back. Do you want to?
Sorry.
I just want to answer. Is it okay, Mary? Okay.
You go first, then Malik.
Thanks, Mary, for your generosity. Okay. Sorry. First of all, I would like to make clarity that I do not agree with my friend that Aberdeen City Council is losing credibility. We have won the Council of the Year award in the United Kingdom. Did any other administration win any award like that? And we were shortlisted again Council of the Year. Councillor Nicol, you don't have to laugh because it is a reality and you cannot deny it, okay? We won Council of the Year award in the United Kingdom, not in Scotland. To my friend Mr. Ritchie, no. If Scottish government giving us just a peanut, they are not doing a massive favor. We are part of Scotland. We are not out of Scotland. We are not in Cambodia. Aberdeen City Council is the lowest funded council for many, many years. When we were giving target of 326 million for non-domestic rate, and we had it 358 million pound, and when we asked in COSLA that can we get additional money back from the Scottish government and we can invest in our city for our road, for our education, and we put motion in COSLA, it was there for a long time, and what happened? Just half an hour before the meeting, I was there and I was told that no, we are not going to take it. Why is that? Because majority of the people in the COSLA are from the SNP, and they said no. Councillor Yule was there and Councillor Nicol, they were just sitting there when I stood up for Aberdeen City Council, and the Councillor Nicol was hiding there in the chair. He did not speak up for the city of Aberdeen. We have to give priority to our city. We have to work for our city. We have to work for our people. We cannot just listen all the time to the Scottish government. We have to support our citizen of Aberdeen. We are not here that we are representative of Scottish government and then we just do whatever we get dictation from the Scottish government. No, that's not acceptable. People of Aberdeen, they elect us to serve the citizen of Aberdeen. Sorry, I have to go over 15 minutes and I apologize. I would love to stay here. I would like to get more questions from here. But because I'm 20 minutes over the time and I have to break my fast, I started about 3:15. Can I thank you to the great people of the Lower Deeside? They elected me 10 years ago, first ever ethnic councillor in the city. And I'm proud of my community and I owe a lot to this great city. I have worked really hard for my city, for my ward, for my community. I am living in the community. I'm living at 25 School Road for many, many years, and I love to live here because I love this community. And if you please give me opportunity, I will keep working hard again. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Malik. Can you pass it on to Mary,
Is it
please?
okay if I go
Yes,
then?
no, that's
Right. Is it okay if I go then, yes?
Okay, we thank Malik for coming along tonight and let him go and break his fast. Please, go and eat.
I have to break now because it's over the limit. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay, you want me to? I'll move into your seat, Malik.
You can get space.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, we you know, I agree that I'm here first
Mary,
and
can you
foremost.
speak into the other end?
Oh God, yes. Sorry. It's been a long night. I haven't eaten either, Malik. No, I mean, we are here for the people of Lower Deeside and of the city. And no, we don't get a fair deal. And I think we do need to keep pushing that message. And we need to keep fighting for more and more. And I'm sorry, we don't get the same investment in capital projects. And that's perhaps why we've got so much borrowing that we have to do it ourselves. If we hadn't done the art gallery and got money from the Heritage Lottery Fund, and also the UK government did give us money for the Cowdrey Hall, for Memorial Hall. So, you know, we are looking for a better settlement. We are there to push back, and I know that there's many people where the Scottish Government reporter in planning terms has overturned local decisions. There's Rubislaw Quarry, there's Multimber South, there's Torry Waterfront. These are all decisions that have been overturned by the Scottish Government, and we have to push back and demand our local democracy is respected first and foremost. So I'll pass it on to anyone who wants it.
Duncan, do you have anything to add?
I think Mary said it really well, as did Malik. The other thing I would like to add is, you know, just the support for the oil and gas industry. You know, we are targeting an energy transition, but we still very much need the oil and gas industry. They're vital for UK energy security, vital for the economy in the area, vital for jobs, and they, of course, the oil companies are the biggest investors in the energy transition. So we just need that support for that industry as well, so it doesn't help that the Scottish Government have kind of put the boot into them recently.
Okay. Turning to the other end of the table, Ian, have you got any comment you'd like to make?
I've done it again.
Just don't touch the clip.
It's booby trapped. Thanks. The job of every single Aberdeen City Councillor should be to stand up for our city. That's what we're there to do, to stand up for our constituents and our city and get the best possible deal we can for our city from government. Aberdeen City Council, since it was created, well, it was created in 1995, but since it took powers in 1996, has been the lowest funded council in Scotland per head of population. That's a matter of fact. And I've challenged ministers of more than one party to explain to me why it costs less to employ a teacher in Aberdeen, to fill a pothole in Aberdeen, or to provide a social care service in Aberdeen than it does anywhere else in Scotland. Because it doesn't. In fact, in some cases, it's more expensive. Now, that's not a new issue. Every single political party represented in the Scottish Parliament, apart from the Greens, every single political party represented in the Scottish Parliament, apart from the Greens, has been in government since 1996. It actually goes back to before devolution. So even the Conservatives have been in government. And none of them have tackled that problem. That Aberdeen, and for that matter Aberdeenshire as well, but Aberdeen in particular, really does get a really awful deal through government funding by way of the COSLA funding formula. Where I perhaps disagree with my Labour and Conservative colleagues is that I don't believe you persuade someone to change their ways by abusing them and insulting them and picking fights with them. You should engage with them and try to persuade them. I've always found that's a better way to get change than to just have a ding-dong, because you might feel
Somebody's not.
I hope that's not the message to shut up. You might feel good about having a ding-dong with the Scottish Government, but ultimately you're not going to get anything more out of them because of that. So we should engage with the Scottish Government, we should engage as Team Aberdeen across parties to persuade the Scottish Government and COSLA that Aberdeen deserves a fair deal. And if we got that fair deal, if we got even 90% of the average level of funding that other Scottish councils get, it would transform the City Council's finances. It would mean even better schools. It would mean much better roads. It would mean better social care services. It would mean even better green spaces and open spaces. But we need to work together as a team to do that, not knock lumps out of each other locally, or try and knock lumps out of the Scottish Government.
Daniel, have you got anything you'd like to add?
I don't have much to say, I mean, but I can agree with Ian when he said all parties on the table, all the main four parties had a chance since '96, and it has been a status quo situation that did not improve to anything, and we need reform here, and I agree with all candidates, yeah. And Aberdeen is lagging behind with the amount of money compared to other councils, but at the same time, we also have created wealth that didn't go to the right places then. I mean, we need reform here. Thank you.
So can I just make one correction to what I said? I mistakenly said, of course, the Greens haven't been in government. Of course, they have been in government, so they also share the blame. But this is not about party politics, it's about geographical politics.
Gillian, if you get anything
Yeah,
to add.
just very briefly. I have to be honest and say I can harp on about how badly we were let down here in Aberdeen by the Central Belt, and we all know that, and I'm not going to repeat what we've heard before because I know where we stand with the finances. What I care about is getting as much money as we can into Aberdeen to make it as good as we can, and I don't care whether that comes from the UK government or the Scottish government. I think we can work together on it. And I think we've heard us all bashing heads together today, but I do think we can work together on this, and I do think in local council it's important that we do come together when we can. I disagree respectively with each other when we have to, but ultimately we've got not much money, but we've got to do the very best that we can with it and try to fight for more funding, and I think that's what we're trying to do, and that's what the Scottish Conservatives will do.
Thank you. I'm going to take one more question, a question rather than a comment, if that's okay, because we've only got a quarter of an hour left, and I've got another point I would make.
A question from me.
Excellent.
No mention has been made of the link road from North Deeside Road to Garthdee, as Councillor Malik mentioned, but presumably that takes in Inchgarth Road now, does it?
It goes.
Is that going to be upgraded?
I don't know.
Nobody knows. No, nobody cares either from the council. But what I'm going to say that £5 million has just been allocated by the existing councillors to assist in what is called the infrastructure. Let's get this right. Investment of this kind should be used for infrastructure to unlock housing sites that are of strategic. That's housing sites that are of strategic importance to the local authority. So, what the existing councillors have done is allocated £5 million to millionaires so that they can just press ahead with the infrastructure here and hopefully, at the end of the day, make enough money to repay. Now, that is very questionable. What we've got here is 81 two-bed flats for over 55-year-olds. Well, good luck on that lot, trying to sell that to, I don't think that will happen. And there is, of course, a nursing home, but nobody seems to want to build nursing homes anymore. So the chances of actually making the £5 million to pay back to the government is nil. So what my question is to the existing or proposed councillors is, would you do the same for existing millionaires with strategically important housing developments? I hardly think it's a strategically important one. But however, I'd like to hear what you are going to say on the subject.
Okay, I'll let Mary go first, if that's okay.
Yeah, no, that's fine. The money you're referring to was put forward in the administration's budget, which I didn't support because I was a planning convener and tied up in part the conditions that the road had to be delivered by the developer up front, because at the end of the day, the majority of people who made comments in a positive way about that application, it was because they wanted the road. So that's why I absolutely tied the road had to be delivered first at the expense of the developer, because we've got lots of roads that need to be delivered and improved. We've talked about that briefly today, and I certainly wasn't prepared to back that. So, you know, that is my position on it.
Yep.
Ian, would you take up that one?
Yep. Briefly, you'll be delighted to hear. Mary's right. That proposal, or it's not now a proposal, it's been agreed, was part of the Labour Conservative budget, which was ultimately agreed by the Council. That's not the view of my party. The Liberal Democrats do not believe public money should go into creating that link road. We don't believe it's appropriate. It should be part of the development if the development ultimately goes ahead. For that matter, we don't actually support building the link road at all, but certainly no public money.
Can I just add as well that the development, while it was in principle approved, it hasn't actually been, no approval has been released because there's no legal agreement in place, and there has to be a legal agreement that's sitting with the developer. So just to give you that piece of information.
Yeah, but my point is, Mark,
yeah.
that here we are listening to saying we're not getting enough money, and suddenly you're handing £5 million to millionaire developers.
As I said,
what's happened up in Countess Wells?
What we saw.
Countess Wells have gone bankrupt, as we all know, and they took a huge loan in the same method as this, and the likelihood of getting that money back is nil. So who's holding the big again? We, the taxpayers, are paying for that, and Aberdeen loses that again. Now, it's just ridiculous what is going on, and it needs to be sorted.
Absolutely, but to be fair to if I may, to be fair to Mary, she didn't support it. I mean,
was a guy that
I said Mary. It was a Labour Conservative budget that included it. Perhaps our Conservative colleagues could defend that decision. I can't, because I think it was the wrong decision.
Fine. Well, someone who can understand it. I mean, the sad thing is that you're not getting the opportunity of representing councillors to say whether they would approve of that or not.
Do any of the currently non-elected councillors have a comment to make about that particular development?
I'm not really close enough to that issue to really comment. I mean, in general, I don't like the principle of giving money to developers. I think developers do not get held to account in general properly. They don't have to build the infrastructure that's needed for all these new developments, and generally, they seem to get away with that. But I think that's a national issue and not necessarily an Aberdeen issue. But obviously, these specific examples seem to come home to us.
You want to say something, Ewan?
Yeah, please. I agree with what's been said there. I think it's a lot of money to be thrown after developers, and we do have a big problem in Aberdeen of developers not fulfilling their obligations after they complete things. And obviously, we're now in a situation where a lot of these developers bought land for really high value when the oil price was high, and they're now sitting on it and not doing anything with it because they can't make their money back off it. So that means even less developer obligations are going to get taken care of. I don't support it. And I'm looking over at Alex, and he seems to agree. So.
Okay.
Green space.
Could you please use the microphone, please? No, you do need a microphone. You do need a microphone. People watching online won't hear.
Thank you. Hello, good evening. What I'd like to say is you spoke tonight about green pockets and green spaces. All I can see is a sea of green sweeping down here. And yet, we have this open green space which you've taken away to put up a housing development that we don't actually need. Now, the usage of this green space next to us has increased greatly, especially during the pandemic, where people really needed these open spaces and to have that break along the railway line, which can get busy. And yes, it might look wild to some people, but it's quite natural. You see Boy Scouts and guides, in there exploring, doing their own thing. So I just feel that was a great loss to the city, the green space, the physical and mental well-being, not just for the people that live there, but for the wider community.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Very good point.
Okay. I'm going to just not to mention I had one questioner who'd emailed and a couple of questions, and I've not quite managed to get to them yet, so I want to just take one of their questions to round off the evening. And it touches on something that's already been mentioned before, and Daniel, I think you're going to love this question. It says, a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. While there are spots of excellent cycling infrastructure dotted around the city, for example, the Deeside Way, there are also significant portions which are not fit for purpose. It's impossible to cycle as a family from, for example, Multimber to the city centre, as one has to contend with fast-moving traffic in areas where no segregated cycle lanes exist. And here's the question. Will the candidates commit to a safe, that is, more than just some paint on the road, joined up cycling network around the city? It's a yes or a no?
A big full yes. I'm cycling this road for 12 years now. It's ridiculous. And always this reference to the Deeside Way, it's also ridiculous. It's a leisure path for shared users like horse riders, dog walkers, and cyclists and skateboarders, but not as a serious commute from Bankery to Aberdeen. And it's just, we can have cycling way opportunities all over the road. And everybody of us did the A93 consultation there recently from the council to address these points. And I think, everybody had the opportunity to make the vote to put their ideas down for a multimodal way of traffic from basically Bankery to the city centre. But it's just one arterial road. There are many arterial roads in Aberdeen that suffer from the same poor conditions. It's just one big obvious thing that we should improve. And then we don't even need a new road linking Gardaí from here called through a new development in the middle of green space. We can adjust to that. And we have links there. And we all know this. There's a derelict bridge on the Gardaí road to the other side of the Dee. That's not in use. Couldn't we make an active travel bridge there to reach North Kincardine? Instead of the weak Dee, the bridge over the Dee that's just on the other side of the Gardaí bridge. We all know, it's lots of opportunities for cycling. Yeah.
So the answer is yes.
Yeah. But it's very obvious. It's just, and we don't need to. We just need a shared focus on that.
Okay, Gillian.
I agree that we need more cycle lanes. We need fit-for-purpose cycle lanes. And I do think that we should have more joined-up thinking when it comes to the cycle lanes so that, yes, people can access one area of the city to another. But I think it needs to be part of a bigger picture. We need to do it sensibly and cater for all road users as well as the cyclists.
Okay, thank you. Ewan.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I'm a cyclist as well, and it's like taking your life in your hands in Aberdeen. I grew up about half my life in Edinburgh, and it's much better to cycle around, having come here. There's a driving culture here which is very aggressive, and I think that doesn't help either. When you're on your bike, you do actually feel like people are, they drive incredibly close to you, and so there's a bit of a culture shift that needs to change as well to help cyclists to actually have the kind of courage to get on the road. But yeah, we need to join up the entire network. I'd like to see that happen.
Go to Mary next and then to Duncan.
Thanks very much. Well, we've actually just been going through a consultation with Sustrans about proper networks for cyclists. And in fact, at my planning committee today, when we were talking about the framework for Prime 4, we talked about that very briefly. And that is going to be part of the wider transport active travel routes that are being looked at right across the city, from Cove right over. And again, I would like to see a pedestrian stroke cycle footbridge over the River Dee. I think it would be really, really helpful, because the one at the Bridge of Dee is not really fit for purpose. So yes, I would support it, but again, it comes back to we need the money to be able to put it in properly and to make sure that it's usable 365 days a year. So yeah, it's a great idea. Let's make sure we've got the resources. But when we're struggling to surface the pavements at the moment, actually adding to a network by having another cycle route separate to what currently exists, and I see cyclists going along the road having to swerve out of the edges of the road, and actually I know that the current ones that we've got are not actually, wouldn't be approved now by Sustrans to be funded. So there is lots of different elements that have to come together to make it a comprehensive service. And I'm sorry, I've spoken to a lot of cyclists in Edinburgh, and they're not quite so comfortable as you are, obviously, in Edinburgh cycling. So don't you knock Aberdeen.
Yeah, I'm a part-time cyclist as well. Cycle to work most days, but I agree with Mary. Great to have the cycle network, but that takes investment and resources, and I think it is, it's a Conservative manifesto pledge to review the cycle lanes, but it needs the money.
Okay, and finally, Ian.
5 million.
Not touch the plan.
Right, we'll just let Ian. Okay, we'll let Ian have the final word, and I'm hoping we're going to hopefully have ended up in a question where we're almost all in the same tune, but just coming at it from slightly different angles.
Okay, I'm delighted to have the final word. Can I say that Aberdeen's cycle lanes don't need reviewing, they need action. Aberdeen's cycle infrastructure is absolutely dire. My party, the Liberal Democrat view, is that if the council's building any new roads, those should include physically segregated cycle lanes. A dot of white paint along a couple of feet out from the curb does not create a safe cycle lane. And of course, even that dot of white paint usually disappears when you come to a junction, which of course is when cyclists need most protection. Other things we do would be to provide covered and secure cycle storage lockers in areas across the city where principally areas with flats, where it's more difficult for people to store bikes in their own homes. The comment was made about joined up thinking. What we need is joined up cycle lanes. They come to a stop and they start, and they stop and they start. And I'm also a cyclist occasionally, I think not as often as some others, but I wouldn't cycle in Aberdeen city centre. I used to, but I wouldn't now, because I just don't feel safe. But we need joined up cycle lanes, physically segregated, which makes it safe for people to cycle. So yes.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You mean the country lanes around Aberdeen? Yeah, but that's not a daily way of transport. I agree. I cycle everywhere.
Okay, I think we've come to past 9 o'clock. So some of these conversations, I'm sure you can carry on having with your candidates. They have put themselves up for election, and I always think whether or not you agree with somebody's politics, you have to admire people who are willing to stand for election. It's not an easy thing to do. It's not easy to put yourself up, and it's certainly not easy to sit here in a panel night and have whatever thrown at you, and you've handled yourself very well tonight. So thank you very much. Can we give them a wee round of applause? Can I thank you for coming along, because without you there would be no question time, there would be no Hustings, and to those that have joined us online, there have been a few folk watching online. I was just checking earlier on, so thank you for them that have joined too. So safe journey home. If you're on your bikes, put your lights on. And thank you again for coming tonight.
And thank you for cheering.
Thank you.